fantastic. I'll start, inshallah. Bismillah. So I'm just starting with this image because I wanted to really highlight that we're all on a journey, and parenting is one of those journeys that we're on, a noble journey, a noble quest, a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on this journey, there are many different terrains, and our philosophies, these are sort of our vehicles. It's not the only vehicle. Today I want to share with you a little bit about the Montessori one, but that doesn't mean that that is worse or better than anything else. It's just a vehicle, and especially as Muslims, we're encouraged to take the wisdom wherever we find it. So inshallah, ya Rabbi, you find some sort of wisdom from the Montessori approach that can help you in your journey, inshallah. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about who Maria Montessori was. So she was born in Italy, she's Italian, to a middle-class family. Her parents had very traditional views about what they wanted her to do, encouraging her to go into teaching, but she actually was more interested in the sciences. She enrolled to the University of Rome to become a doctor, and only got in because of a typo. The person working in admissions read her name as Mario as opposed to Maria, and that's the only reason that she was admitted, subhanAllah, to the Royal Medical School. She graduated with honors, and making her the first female doctor, the first female physician in Italy. She later specialized in pediatrics and psychiatry, which was a very new field at the time. I think a lot of you can imagine the kind of institutional sexism that she would have come across at that time, being the only woman. And one of the things, well, she's a very intelligent woman, and they couldn't really just justify not giving her any role. So one of the things they did was give her, let her work with the most marginalized in society, those that really nobody else wanted to work with. And this was what we would call today sort of, well, an asylum, or like a center for children with special needs. And she worked with them, and her approach, as I said, she was never really inclined towards education. Her approach was scientific. She went in there, she observed the children, she thought, she reflected on their human developmental needs, and it's based on that she derived her methodology. She came back with the findings that she had, presented it to various boards of education, and they were reluctant for her to work with older children, but they kind of thought, okay, fine, we'll give you sort of a nursery setting. And that's when she set up her first children's home in the slums of Rome in 1907. She had a huge emphasis on peace and believed that children are the future, and that kind of got her in trouble a little bit in terms of politics, and she was exiled by Mussolini during World War II. And that actually just gave her an opportunity to spread her methodology and her ideology to India, Spain, the Netherlands, where she later died, and the United States, and really all over the world now. You hear of Montessori schools, or nurseries, or even people just doing Montessori at home. So what was it that defined her principles? What are her defining principles? The very first one is respect for the child. Now, a lot of us will understand respect in terms of how we speak to people. And that, of course, is a very, very, very huge part of it. We should speak to our children. One of the things that in the back of my mind, speak to your child as if there's another adult in the room. How does that reflect on you, the way that you speak to your child? But respect for her went beyond just how you speak to the child. It's not, it's not just about the sort of kind words. Respect is shown for the child, for example, by not interrupting their concentration, their flow. She believed that play is the work of children. When a child is engaged in an activity, and she had this principle of a sort of a working cycle. So it could be, say, 3 hours. That the child isn't, we're not giving them lots of stop, start, stop, starts. We're allowing them to really be engrossed in an activity, to really experience flow. So part of that respect is when you see the child engaged in activity, that we allow them to do that without interrupting them. Part of showing respect for the child is to give them freedom to make some choices. So what they're going to wear. We give them tools to kind of identify what's seasonally appropriate, but they go and choose, bearing the consequences. We show them how to eat healthily, and then we let them go ahead and prepare their own snack. So it's these tiny things that help them to feel respected, that they have some sort of autonomy. Also for her, the adult, whether it's the parent or here the teachers, or what she called the guides, they show respect for all the children, all the adults, and that they model peaceful conflict resolution. One of my favorite things is what they, a method for conflict resolution is the peace mat, where, and I've tried this in my own home and in my own kind of classroom setup, where two children have, had a sort of falling out, and then we go and get the peace mat, which is really just a sajada, it's just a prayer mat that I have. And it's wonderful because when I say, okay, it's time for us to go and get the peace mat, just saying that and rolling it out de-escalates the situation. They know they're going to sit down. They know it's a safe space for them to sort of talk their own truth, but also to listen to the other person. And another example of respect for the child, of course, is that that we as adults need to learn to observe without judgment. So as I'd mentioned before, the way that Maria Montessori derived her teaching method is from observing those children that she was working with. And we need to sort of do the same with our children. So when they're doing an activity, we feel sometimes that we need to involve ourselves, tell them what to do, make sure it's right. We do this a lot when children have got sort of homework. Perhaps if we delve deeper into ourselves, we'll realize that we're doing this because we're worried about what their result reflects on us. We're a bit embarrassed. We don't want them to show up and have something that's not as good as it is. So, but what we actually need to do is just to stop and to, stand back and allow them to do it without our own judgment. The second principle that she identified, or something that she observed, is that the child has an absorbent mind, and we know this. We know that children, people have always said they're like sponges. They are products of their environment, and that they absorb the world through their senses, through touch, through smell, through taste. We see that, we know, anyone who's had a baby knows that the first, children explore first with their mouth. That's why they'll pick up things on the floor and they'll put it in their mouth, because, this is the first sense that they can relate to. The children, there's a beautiful, one of her quotes is, what the hand does, the mind remembers. So the children are capable of absorbing knowledge around them. And one of the prime examples is language. We might think that, yes, we've read to children, we read to our children, and we speak to them. That does have a huge influence in terms of word acquisition, language acquisition. But fundamentally, they're doing most of that themselves. They're picking up the patterns of speech, and they're doing that, subhanAllah, by themselves. So the absorbent mind was the second principle. The third principle that she identified are sensitive periods. And this is just about key times where children are more ready to learn a certain skill. And they have this sensitive period for as long as they need it. So for example, scientists now have identified that children's most sensitive period to acquire a second language is 0 to 6. But when you look in reality, when do we introduce a second language? When children are in secondary school. So, and they struggle then. So there's this sort of discrepancy between when they're ready for something, and it's, that sort of like fertile soil, to when something's being implemented. As a teacher, we're supposed to look and observe, we're supposed to closely observe the child to see when they are displaying certain sensitive periods. When are they starting to display that they have an eagerness to write? So for example, she said that children enjoy writing and before, or have a sensitive period for writing before they do for reading. And you see that because they'll pick up a pen or a crayon or chalk or something. They'll want to try and draw symbols and things like that. And we know that even from things like toilet training, we identify when our child is ready. And those of us who have more than one child will know that our two children, even if they're from the same home, they reach certain milestones or readiness to do something at different stages in their lives. The fourth principle was the prepared environment. And I love this quote. And she says, the first aim of the prepared environment is, as far as it is possible, to render the growing child independent of the adult. So the prepared environment is, how are you making your home accessible or suitable for the growing needs of your child? How accessible are their clothes, or say a snack if they're hungry, hooks to hang up their coat. If you like to put things like art or whatever up on the wall, how much of it is at their eye level, or are they craning their necks to be able to see it? What about things like tools such as mops or brooms? Do we have anything that's suitable for them so that they feel that they're a valued and contributing member of the environment that they're in? What she found was that children respond positively to an environment where also it's calm and orderly, where things have their place. If you've ever looked at an image of a Montessori classroom, a Montessori prepared environment, you'll find that there's a lot of space. Things are arranged in order of what they in order of, in the sequence that they're supposed to be presented in terms of how a skill is developed. They're arranged in trays. It's quite easy and accessible for the child to go and collect it. Children will work on a mat, so they don't have to work on tables. They can work on the floor with, a mat that they'll roll, they'll be rolled up and they'll roll it out. The idea is because this is their space, and also it teaches them responsibility, because afterwards they need to go and put everything back. So the prepared environment is one of the key principles that she developed. The fifth and final principle here is auto-education, so self-education, and it's the concept that children are capable of educating themselves. One of the things she says is, never help a child with a task at which he feels he can succeed. When we think of when we were younger as well, every problem that we solved on our own as children, it's an affirmation that the world wants us to succeed. So we need to give those chances for children. We don't have to micromanage what they're doing. We need to allow them to do things, even if they get it wrong. When we look at Montessori materials, we'll find that they're designed for to give instant feedback. So things will not fit properly if it's not right. So the child can see, okay, this isn't right. I need to fix it. But there's room for them to fix it. There's room for them to correct things and learn from themselves and learn from it without adult assistance. And that's very, very significant for the younger children. As the children get older and they move from this sort of concrete world with real, tangible materials, and they get older and move more into the abstract, they still have that autonomy. So when I make work for the children, I'll make sure I have a control card, or in other words, your answer sheet. And they can go, there's not that fear of, if I leave the answer sheet with the children, they're going to cheat, because they don't feel that there's no competition. There are no reward charts. They're learning for the sake of learning. It's intrinsic. They get something wrong, there's no shaming. And so they have a very good attitude towards getting something wrong, because they realize that it's actually a step for them to improve. So one of the key phrases that you'll find if you ever Google Montessori is follow the child. So I'm going to read this quote of hers because I think it kind of summarizes it very well. She says, follow the child. They will show you what they need to do, what they need to develop in themselves, and what area they need to be challenged in. The aim of the children who persevere in the work with an object is certainly not to learn. They are drawn to it by the needs of their inner life, which must be recognized and developed by its means. So it's not about following your child's whims and desires. It's about observing what it is that they need in their development right now. What are their interests? What are their passions? And fulfilling them. And it's really about becoming more in tune with our children. All of you who have children at home right now because of the lockdown are in effect Montessorians. You're in tune with your child's needs. You know when they're hungry, you know when they need to sleep. And, you know, there have been many opportunities and many instances when you have all recognized milestones or sensitive periods and you've supported them in what they needed to do. You've all marveled in awe at your child's marvelous acquisition of skills like walking and speech. And these are huge things where you've actually been able to step back without interference and just enjoyed what they're doing, this amazing miracle of speech acquisition and walking that they're doing all by themselves. And those of you who have more than one child will have experienced teaching in mixed age groups, which is what actually Montessori had. She didn't distinguish between children on in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of ability, or even in terms of interest. Children worked side by side. So you are all Montessorians already. You're already doing this. You're cultivating mentorship and leadership and compassion in your children on a daily basis. So what can we do to kind of further support our children using the Montessori principles in our home? One of the things I'd say is to make things more accessible if we can. A lot of people might go now and look on Instagram and Pinterest and see the images of how Montessori at home look like, and you might feel disheartened. You might think, well, I don't have the space and I don't have the financial resources to be able to have these beautiful small bookshelves and and have a wicker basket on a tray and with one activity in each. This isn't something that's accessible to me. This isn't something that's possible to me, and that's okay. This isn't about just a whole upheaval in your home. It's more to do with your attitude. Maybe see if there can be certain hooks that you can make so that children are able to hang up their coat. Just that sense of pride they get from being able to do that by themselves without having to rely on a parent. Maybe stepping stools so that they're able, to do things and help in the kitchen without you having to do it for them. So that, one of the things that she says the child likes to say is, help me to help myself. So it's about seeing what small changes we can do to enhance the child's independence and self-esteem. The second is to declutter our environment, and that's good for our own mental health, not just the children. A lot of the time the children have so many toys that they don't know where to start. So one of the things that a friend of mine had suggested actually was rotating toys. So have a few things on display that the child can really master a particular skill or something, and the rest of it, pack it away in a box, maybe under beds, wherever you have space. We don't always have a lot of space in our homes, and especially now with lockdown where we're all at home, and there are lots of things that we're juggling at the same time. The third is work with your child to design an individualized learning plan or journey reflective of his interests or her interests. So you've got children, they're in school, and it might be that you're finding that they're finishing their schoolwork very quickly, and you don't know what to do, you're scared about them spending the rest of the time whether on Netflix or gaming. So how do you sit down with the child and really work with them? So what do you want to learn about? And utilizing the technology. YouTube has some great channels to teach you how to knit, teach you how to set up your own website, whatever it is that your child wants to do. It's involving them, it's having that conversation with the child and making them feel that you're interested in what they're interested in. Work with your child to make checklists, and this will help. So, if your child is of school going age and they've got things that they have to submit for school, but there's other stuff that they might need to do as well. Perhaps you've enrolled them to do some Arabic online or a second language or Quran or whatever. Help them by making checklists so that they're able to self-monitor, self-pace, because they need to know what needs to be done, and to also self-reflect, oh, I didn't really do anything today, and but without shaming, and just make them feel like, well, what can we do to make it better? How will we work on this tomorrow? And finally, the biggest one is to trust the child. Trust means trust that the child inside them is a scientist. You know, within the child is a little being who wants to learn, who loves to learn, who's inquisitive, and that learning is their natural state. And when we remove the things that clutter that will be able to reveal itself. So with that, I end my presentation.